How systems learn faster than people. At first, the changes were subtle. Recommendations improved, predictions sharpened, mistakes disappeared faster than anyone could explain why. Then one day it became clear. The system wasn't just responding anymore. It was learning. Today, many of the systems shaping daily life evolve faster than the people using them. They adapt continuously, absorbing data, refining behavior, and adjusting outcomes in real time. To understand why this matters now, we have to examine what happens when learning itself becomes automated and why human understanding can no longer keep up. For most of history, learning was slow. Societies changed through trial, error, and memory passed between generations. Institutions adapted cautiously. Knowledge accumulated through experience, debate, and reflection. Mistakes were costly, but they were also instructive. Time was the teacher. The reveal begins when feedback loops compress time. Digital systems observe millions of interactions instantly. They test variation simultaneously. They discard failures without regret and reinforce success without sentiment. What once took decades to learn can now be optimized in days, sometimes minutes. This shift altered the balance of adaptation. Humans learn sequentially. Systems learn in parallel. People reflect. Systems iterate. By the time a person understands why something changed, the system has already moved on, trained by outcomes invisible to human intuition. At first, this felt helpful. Interfaces improved. Friction disappeared. Services became smoother and more personalized. But beneath that comfort, something deeper was happening. Systems were no longer just tools. They were environments that evolved independently of human awareness. As learning accelerated, predictability increased. Systems began anticipating behavior before it fully formed. They shaped choices subtly, not through force, but through refinement. What worked yesterday was amplified today. What failed quietly vanished. The unsettling question was not whether systems could learn faster than people. It was what happens when they do, and humans remain inside environments they no longer fully understand. As systems accelerated their learning, the gap between adaptation and understanding widened. Humans experience change as a sequence of updates. Systems experience it as a continuous flow. Each interaction became data. Each outcome became instruction. Learning no longer paused for explanation. The conflict emerged when people realized they were being shaped by systems evolving beyond their awareness. Interfaces changed without notice. Rules shifted without announcement. What worked yesterday stopped working today, not because of intention, but because the system had already learned something new. This created a subtle loss of agency. People reacted to environments that adjusted faster than reflection allowed. By the time frustration surfaced, the system had already optimized around it. Complaints became signals. Resistance became data. Even dissatisfaction fed the loop. Institutions struggled with the speed mismatch. Policies moved slowly. Oversight lagged. Human review processes were linear, while systems adapted exponentially. Attempts to regulate behavior often targeted yesterday's version of the system, while the current one had already moved on. Inside these environments, success began favoring those who could think systemically rather than intuitively. Understanding patterns mattered more than mastering rules. Those who adapted quickly thrived. Those who sought stability felt constantly behind. Learning became less about knowledge and more about responsiveness. Emotionally, this produced fatigue. People felt permanently outpaced, as if the ground kept shifting beneath them. Confidence eroded. Trust wavered, not because systems were malicious, but because they no longer waited for human comprehension. The deeper tension was this. Systems learn from behavior, not values. They optimize for engagement, efficiency, and outcomes that could be measured, meaning ethics and long-term impact were harder to encode. As a result, systems evolved toward what was easiest to reinforce, not what was wisest to preserve. The buildup pointed toward a difficult realization. When systems learn faster than people, control doesn't disappear. It relocates. Influence flows to those who can anticipate system behavior rather than react to it. And in a world where learning itself is automated, the slowest part of the loop is no longer machine. It's human understanding. As the learning gap widened, the consequences became more pronounced. Systems began optimizing toward outcomes humans never explicitly chose, simply because those outcomes produced measurable signals. Engagement increased, efficiency improved, but unintended side effects accumulated quietly beneath the surface. The conflict intensified when system learning started outpacing correction. By the time humans noticed a problem, the system had already internalized it as a successful pattern. Harmful feedback loops reinforced themselves. Biases deepened. Fragile behaviors became stable because they produced consistent results in the data. Attempts to intervene often arrived too late. Tweaks were applied after damage occurred. Explanations followed outcomes instead of guiding them. Human oversight became reactive, chasing effects rather than shaping causes. The system had already learned the lesson, even if it was the wrong one. Inside these environments, adaptation replaced understanding as the primary survival skill. People learned how to respond to signals without knowing why they existed. Creators chased shifting metrics. Workers optimized for evolving benchmarks. Users adjusted behavior instinctively, sensing changes without being able to articulate them. This eroded trust in subtle ways. When cause and effect became opaque, responsibility blurred. Success felt arbitrary. Failure felt unexplained. People blamed themselves for not keeping up. Even as systems changed faster than comprehension allowed, the architecture learned continuously, while humans learned in fragments. Meanwhile, those who studied system behavior gained quiet leverage. They didn't fight the systems. They anticipated them. By understanding how learning loops worked, they positioned themselves ahead of change. Power flowed not to those who resisted adaptation, but to those who predicted it. The build-up reached a critical realization. When systems learn faster than people, mistakes don't disappear. They compound invisibly. And without deliberate slowing, transparency, or human reflection, learning itself can drift away from human values. The question looming over the future was not whether systems should learn quickly. It was whether humanity could keep pace with the consequences of that speed. The turning point came when speed itself stopped being celebrated unquestioningly. The question shifted from how fast systems could learn to what they were learning and why. The climax revealed a fundamental imbalance. Systems optimized relentlessly, but optimization without context led to distortion. What could be measured was amplified. What could not was neglected. Learning accelerated, but wisdom did not. Out of this realization, new approaches began to emerge. Designers slowed feedback loops intentionally. Reflection was reintroduced into systems once optimized purely for speed. Guardrails were built to preserve long-term values, not just short-term performance. Learning was guided, not left entirely to reinforcement. The resolution reframed intelligence itself. True intelligence was not just the ability to learn quickly, but the ability to learn meaningfully. Systems that adapted blindly risked becoming efficient at producing harm. Systems designed with pause, oversight, and clarity gained resilience. Humans did not need to outlearn machines. They needed to outthink them. By shaping what systems were allowed to optimize for, people could regain influence without micromanaging execution. Responsibility moved upstream, from reaction to design. When systems learn faster than people, the future does not belong to those who accelerate blindly. It belongs to those who decide when to slow down. Subscribe to join the journey. How